Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is not a show of touring the AFC South, by the way. All right, this is the pit stop. Basically, we're going to, going to change up a few things. Give a little bit of exclusive content to YouTube with shorter videos, but definitely impactful things that are happening in the AFC South. It's going to be called Touring the AFC South Pit Stop, just to give you a heads up on that. Okay, now that we got that, hope we're good. The first pit stop of 2025 is definitely going to the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans fired offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik. Now, many did not expect that to happen. I certainly did not expect it to happen either, but it did, and he's gone. But, of course, you got to wonder, how did we get here? Now, Bobby Slowik was the offensive coordinator for two back-to-back appearances for the Houston Texans in the playoffs. They won their first game both years in the wild card round, got eliminated in the divisional round. But the one word that will capture your attention just in this entire journey from being, first-time offensive coordinator to now fired is expectation. Now, going into the 2023 season, there was no expectation for the Houston Texans. No one really thought they would win the division, let alone make the playoffs. But yet, I'll just give you a little bit of background. Of course, they were a first-year coach with D'Amico Ryans. He had just come over from the San Francisco 49ers as their defensive coordinator, leaving to be the head coach. Bobby Slowik had came over from the 49ers organization to be the first-time offensive coordinator. You had a young rookie quarterback, C.J. Stroud, came out of Ohio State. You had Will Anderson defensively. And then, of course, just switching it back, keeping it offensive. You had an all-pro offensive tackle, Laremy Tunsil. You have, pretty much unknown people, basically, outside of the C.J. Stroud and Laremy Tunsil. What does this team go out and do, though? They go out and defy the odds and win the division. Showing promise. And then they did have money to spend as well. Then they win the first game versus Cleveland, lose the second game to the Ravens. Going into with that actual performance, especially offensively, and the way CJ Stroud looked, teams were very, very into Bobby Slowik. Bobby Slowik had a few interviews. And it was thought that maybe he would be done after 1 year as the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. But despite all of that, he decided to come back to the Houston Texans for one more go-around. And this offseason, they went out there and added Stephon Diggs. Nico Collins turned into an incredible weapon. I guess they didn't know they had, but he basically showed out in the offense the first year. C.J. Stroud had an incredible rookie season. At one point, it was talked about in the MVP race. Yes, he was playing that good. And the offensive line was playing pretty steady. So expectations went from nothing to something. Then when those expectations hit, 2024 hit. And, with all those pieces, you got Tank Dell back for a full season. He fractured his fibula in his first year towards the end of the season. They didn't have him for the playoffs. With all these weapons, with all the things they've added defensively, you would think this Texans team may take another leap and be, potentially a Super Bowl contender. There were people saying that they were Super Bowl contender, me included. I said they would be a Super Bowl contender. However, that just simply was not the case this season. They gave up 52 sacks. Stroud got sacked 52 times in the 2024 season. The offensive line was a mess. It wasn't consistent at all. You had Stephon Diggs get injured. You had Tank Dell get injured again for the season, both out for the season when their injuries happened. Joe Mixon was a bright spot. They traded for him from the Cincinnati Bengals to get a veteran running back. But the O-line was not good. C.J. Stroud was not as good as he was his rookie season, and it just did not work out. Now, they made the playoffs again because the AFC South was so bad last season. And, they win the first game beating the Los Angeles Chargers, which, if anyone knows the Chargers story, it never ends up well in the playoffs. So they win that game versus the Chargers. They go to Kansas City. They lose versus Kansas City. They were in the game. I will give them that, but ultimately lose to Kansas City. And of course, you're sitting here, then boom, Bobby Slowik is fired. Now, there have been Houston fans that have been loving that he has been fired. There's some that are kind of scratching their heads. But ultimately, the big thing here is the offense was inconsistent in his second year. The offensive line was bad. Of course, the offensive line coach did get fired too, by the way. And just this team overall just did not perform offensively like many expected them to. So someone has to take the blame, and it was Mr. Bobby Slowik. So that was the end of his tenure with the Houston Texans. You just can't. Somebody has to take the blame, and going to your third year, C.J. Stroud is inching closer and closer to extension time, and him being out of his rookie contract. And with the way this team is built in Houston, they're trying to win the title as soon as possible, especially with the money they're spending. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But, definitely that surprised a lot of people. But, also what's talked about now is, and so now the next question is who replaces Bobby Slowik? Now, this is an interesting scenario. You have one person that's in-house that people are talking about, and one name that has been mentioned outside of the building with San Francisco connections. We're going to start with the one in the building. That'd be QB coach Jared Johnson. Now, he's been credited by some with the help and development of C.J. Stroud. He could have left last offseason, actually, and he actually interviewed, I believe, with the New Orleans Saints before another gentleman got that job. But he decided to stay in Houston and be the quarterback's coach there. So he's very sought out after. He could have left, like I mentioned, he could have left. A lot of people were looking at him, and I think that he will get an interview for this job, per the reports. And then also, I don't think he's going to be interviewing anywhere else, first, because I believe he wants to, or not he, but I believe the organization wants to try to give him a chance to get the job and see what he can do and what ideas he has as well. Just to give you a little background on him, he was a quarterback at Texas A&M University. He was actually there during the time that Ryan Tannehill, another AFC South quarterback, was there. And for those that don't know, Ryan Tannehill did play wide receiver for a good bit of his time at Texas A&M before he played quarterback. He was a quarterback in high school. Somebody was already there. So he wanted to get on the field, so he switched positions. He also played in the CFL, and he was the number one pick in one season for the USFL, actually, too. So a little bit of history on him. So, hey, he knows his quarterbacking. And, who knows? They may name him the offensive coordinator. However, there is one other name that could be in the running for this job as well. His name is Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints last season. I know it doesn't necessarily look well on paper with how, not good they did. They were explosive to start the season. No one will forget how they dominated the Dallas Cowboys to start the season in Dallas. However, it didn't end very well with injuries and just things not working out as well as he thought. He did have a bright spot, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, when he was signed to the team. He did also, he did also miss his explosive weapons as well. I mean, even with Derek Carr and, people talking bad about Derek Carr and how he's played, I mean, they still had some weapons they were missing. You still had Alvin Kamara back there as well. You still had all these different things going on with this team as well. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out for him. But with the connection between him and D'Amico Ryan with the San Francisco connection there, I mean, you could see the same style offense come in, but just with a different person behind the microphone in Clint Kubiak. You could. Either way it goes, it seems like it's going to be a familiar voice, in my opinion. If those two guys are indeed the true candidates that people are saying that they are, we'll see what happens. But you're entering a pivotal year for C.J. Stroud as a quarterback, the Houston Texans as a team, and DeMeco Ryans as a coach. It will be interesting to see what happens with this offensive coordinator decision. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Pit Stop. Of course, like I mentioned, it's going to be a short and sweet one. There's no commercials, just straight information, straight giving you what I think and my opinions on different things. And, of course, the facts and the history behind those as well when it comes to it in some of these as well. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Of course, you can find me, Mike Patton, on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82 on the artist formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE _general_MP. You can also find the Pit Stop exclusively on YouTube. Yes, there will not be any of this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, just like the other entity that's longer, of course, Touring the AFC South. No, this is exclusively here on YouTube. So, hey, share it with your friends. Make some comments. I'd love to comment back. And go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. And also, subscribe. You got to subscribe as well, especially if you're going to get this content that's exclusively on YouTube. Thank you all for tuning in to the first episode and hopefully many more of the Pit Stop. We're out. Peace.